What's your rank again, ma'am? Coffee officer? The laughter came before the silence. Harsh, echoing, and full of arrogance that clung to the concrete walls of the Navy's most secure war room. Commander Luke Harrow's question had been meant as a joke, but it landed like shrapnel. 15 senior officers froze in their seats before breaking into uneasy chuckles. Lieutenant Briggs snorted first, then Commander Voss, and suddenly the room erupted in a storm of amusement that smelled of power and mockery. At the back of the room stood Tessa Cade, a gray clipboard pressed against her blazer, expression carved in stillness. She didn't blush. She didn't even blink. Her hands adjusted slightly, a simple movement, thumb beneath, index finger along the clip. But the precision of it was something no one in that room recognized. Outside, the Pacific shimmered against the windows of Coronado Naval Base, calm and indifferent. Inside, the hierarchy was alive and vicious. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Veteran Story channel so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. Admiral Jonathan Pike sat at the head of the table, silver hair cropped short, face shaped by decades of decisions that had saved or ended lives. He didn't stop the laughter. He simply observed, arms folded, eyes cold, with a judgment that said she doesn't belong here. Luke leaned back in his chair, ribbons glittering against his uniform. Silent proof of valor that no one dared question. Seriously, though, he continued, voice dripping with smirked civility, maybe grab us some coffee while the grown-ups talk strategy. The laughter sharpened, slicing through the air like a knife against glass. Tessa breathed in. 4 seconds. Held. 4. Exhaled. 4. The kind of breathing Spec Ops soldiers used when gunfire echoed too close. No one noticed. They saw only a woman standing awkwardly under the weight of their scorn. She set her clipboard down, awakened her tablet with a tap, fingers moving in deliberate rhythm. 3 taps, swipe left, 2 more taps. To anyone else, it looked like typing. To Chief Marcus Ramos, the 56-year-old systems officer watching from the side, it looked like a code. The speed, the pattern, too exact, too rehearsed. For just a flicker of a second, a red bar appeared on the main screen. System authentication required. Then it vanished, replaced by a map of some nameless coastline. Ramos frowned. He'd been in the Navy nearly 3 decades and had learned to trust instinct more than protocol. Something about that woman didn't fit the file that said civilian contractor. Luke's laughter kept filling the air. "We need people like you," he said, resting his hands behind his head. "Someone's got to handle the paperwork." Every chuckle that followed was another nail in the coffin of his own perception. Tessa finally lifted her gaze. Just for 2 seconds. Her calm wasn't defiance, it was precision. The kind that belonged to people trained to act, not react. Her screen glowed again, hidden from everyone else. The data didn't lie. Luke's chosen landing zone was a death trap, miscalculated by nearly half a mile. She didn't correct him. She simply noted it, time-stamped it, and listened. Petty Officer Hayes, young and uncorrupted, caught her silence and understood more than anyone. He'd seen that kind of humiliation before. The quiet type men inflicted when they needed someone to feel smaller than them. He didn't laugh. He didn't move. But his jaw tightened, the smallest rebellion. When the laughter finally faded, Admiral Pike cleared his throat. The briefing resumed, but the tension stayed. No one realized the audit had already begun. The room's light buzzed faintly as Tessa stood motionless, her expression unreadable. Under her sleeve, a strip of beige tape circled her wrist, the kind found in every pharmacy. She'd told security it was from a kitchen accident. No one had questioned it. No one ever questioned the quiet ones. Chief Ramos did. He watched. He always watched, and as the war room returned to business, coordinates, extractions, fuel calculations, he made a mental note that the woman they'd mocked might be the most dangerous person in the room. The projector hummed as new coordinates glowed on the war room's main display, a stretch of hostile coastline disguised under a name no one would admit aloud. Commander Luke Harrow stood tall now, the swagger returning to his voice. "We deploy at dawn. Alpha site remains optimal." He spoke with the rhythm of a man convinced his word was gospel. Around him, heads nodded. Rank had its own gravity. It pulled agreement from weaker minds. At the back of the room, Tessa Cade worked silently, her tablet alive with invisible calculations. Her data contradicted Luke's. Alpha Site wasn't optimal. It was a graveyard waiting to happen. The extraction window he'd chosen left the team too far from the carrier, too close to enemy patrol zones. 1,800 meters beyond safe distance. She typed it, highlighted it in red, saved it, but she didn't speak. Not yet. Her eyes drifted toward Captain Reed, who sat 2 seats from Luke, tapping a pen against the steel table. Reed had been the kind of officer who never needed to raise his voice. His power was quieter, more deliberate. When Tessa had entered the briefing earlier, he hadn't moved his chair to make space. She'd had to slide sideways between him and the wall, her shoulder brushing his. Now his legs were stretched under the table, blocking the narrow aisle that led to the exit, a small power play, the kind that says more than words ever could. At some point, Commander Voss angled his phone downward, camera catching Tessa's image through a gap between shoulders. The sound of the shutter was muted, but she heard it. Her gaze didn't waver. 30 seconds later, the faint vibration of encrypted notifications echoed through the table. Signal, the operator's network of choice. Voss had shared the picture, captioned "Support staff trying to play tactician." Within seconds, laughing emojis filled the room in miniature, blue light reflecting on medals and nameplates. Tessa adjusted the bandage on her wrist. Just slightly. The edge lifted for a heartbeat, enough to reveal a glimpse of something darker beneath. An angular mark that wasn't skin. Chief Ramos caught it from his corner. His fingers froze above the keyboard. It wasn't a tattoo any civilian would wear. It looked like authorization. Admiral Pike continued the briefing, his voice even, though something about the woman's composure unsettled him. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't lost. Her stance was too disciplined, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loosely clasped behind her back, weight perfectly centered. It was parade rest, a posture learned through repetition, not accident. Pike leaned toward his aide, Lieutenant Commander Foster. "Where did we source her?" he whispered. "Logistics contractor, sir. Civilian. No prior service listed." Pike's eyes narrowed. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. File says so." But Pike had been in uniform 30 years. Files lied more often than faces did. He watched her again, the rhythm of her breathing, the precision of her movements. Every detail whispered of training, of secrets. And when she looked up from her tablet, calm, unreadable, something cold stirred in his gut. Luke's voice snapped him back. "Admiral, I recommend we commit to Alpha. Weather closes Thursday night, and Bravo's too tight for rotor extraction." "Duly noted," Pike said, but his attention remained divided. Then Captain Reed shifted. The movement was casual, almost lazy. He stretched his arms behind him, brushing the edge of Tessa's folder with his elbow. Papers slid off the table and scattered like white leaves across the floor. "Oh, sorry about that," he said flatly, not moving to help. Tessa knelt to gather the pages. The humiliation was subtle but sharp. The room went silent except for the sound of paper sliding across tile. She collected each sheet, stacking them neatly, her face expressionless. Then she reached for the last page. "Reed's boot pressed down on it. You got it?" he asked with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Yes, sir." Her voice was calm, precise, trained. She waited. He lifted his foot after 3 slow seconds, long enough to remind her of her place. She rose, straightened the papers, and resumed her post, but the screen of her tablet glowed softly as she typed a note. "Reed incident, 927 hours. Every slight, every insult." She was documenting all of it. Moments later, Chief Ramos spoke up. His tone was professional, but the undercurrent of unease was unmistakable. "Sir, minor anomaly in our network logs. Someone's connected to an unrecognized server. Legacy encryption, Cold War era." The laughter died instantly. Luke sat upright. "Can you trace it?" Ramos typed rapidly, his brow furrowed. "It's bouncing through an old protocol. Give me a minute." Luke's gaze swept the room, hunting for guilt. His eyes landed on Tessa, the outsider, the one who didn't belong. "Chief," he said slowly, "where's that signal coming from?" Ramos looked at his screen, then blinked. "According to this, the back table." Every head turned toward her. Tessa didn't look up. She kept typing, slow, deliberate. On her tablet, a small red bar crept forward. Authentication sequence, 2 of 4 inputs complete. Luke rose from his chair. The humor was gone. "Miss Cade," he said, his voice hard. "What are you doing on that device?" Tessa looked up, serene. "Taking notes for the logistics report, sir. Chief Ramos just said you're accessing an encrypted server. I'm connected to the base Wi-Fi, sir. Same as everyone else. Show me your screen." It wasn't a request. She met his eyes. Then, turning to Admiral Pike, she said evenly, "With respect, Admiral, my work is covered by a contractor confidentiality clause. I'd need written authorization to share it." The silence that followed was heavy enough to break bones. Luke's fists clenched. Admiral Pike's voice was measured but sharp. "Chief, lock her device out of the network," Ramos tried. He typed the command, executed, waited, nothing. Tried again, still nothing. "Sir," he said quietly, "her clearance reads as Tier 1. Tier 1. The phrase hit the room like an explosion. Even Pike looked shaken. That level of clearance didn't belong in this room. It belonged to people who answered directly to the president. And standing there, holding her clipboard, Tessa Cade didn't even flinch. "Tier 1. Admiral Pike's voice lost its practiced calm. Around him, officers exchanged uneasy looks. Luke Harrow's expression hardened, disbelief twisting into anger. "That's not possible," he said, stepping forward. "She's a contractor, Admiral. No civilian holds that clearance." Ramos's fingers flew over his keyboard, double-checking. The display didn't lie. Tier 1 authorization, Strategic Intelligence Directorate. His pulse thudded in his ears. "I can't override her access, sir," he admitted. "Her firewall's above my admin privileges." The room erupted into whispers. Tier 1 meant she outranked every man here, including Pike himself. But no one could make sense of it. Tessa Cade, the woman they'd mocked, the so-called coffee officer, stood silent under the storm she'd just unleashed. Luke stepped closer. "Admiral, permission to confiscate her tablet until this is verified." "Granted," Pike said tightly, though unease was creeping into his voice. "Chief, isolate her device." "I tried, sir," Ramos said. "It's responding like it's not even on our network. It's routing through Strategic Intel's black system." Luke's jaw flexed. "Enough games." He rounded the table, boots hitting the floor in heavy, deliberate thuds. "Show me your screen, Miss Cade." She didn't move. "With respect, Commander," she said softly, "you're not in my chain of command." The phrase cut through the air. Her refusal, legal, calm, and absolute. "Admiral?" Luke demanded. Pike hesitated, then exhaled through his nose. "She's right. She's civilian. Technically, she doesn't answer to you." Luke's face reddened. "So she can just—" "Yes," Pike interrupted. "Until we confirm otherwise." Lieutenant Commander Foster was already digging through personnel files, fingers trembling as he swiped across his tablet. "Sir," he said after a moment, voice small, "her file's restricted." "What kind of restricted?" "Skiff level. It's tagged under Directorate authority." "Try again." "I can't, sir." Foster swallowed. "I'd need authorization from Director Carmichael himself." The name hit the table like cold steel. Director James Carmichael, head of Strategic Intelligence, the kind of man who briefed Congress behind closed doors and whose existence wasn't supposed to be publicly acknowledged. "Get him on the line," Pike ordered. "Yes, sir." While Foster worked, Luke's temper boiled over. "Admiral, she's compromised. I want her detained until—" "Sit down, Commander. With all due respect, sir. Now." Luke froze, seething but silent. The tension was electric, humming beneath the fluorescent lights. Tessa remained still, her fingers resting lightly on the tablet. Her breathing hadn't changed. Then Foster spoke again. "Sir, I have the director's office." "They're asking to speak with you." Pike took the phone. "This is Admiral Pike." A pause. Then a crisp female voice answered. "Admiral, I'm transferring you to Director Carmichael. Secure line, stand by." A series of electronic tones sounded, followed by a deeper male voice, deliberate and cold. "Admiral Pike," it said. "I understand you have questions about one of my personnel." "Yes, sir," Pike began. "We have a—" "She doesn't claim anything," Carmichael interrupted. "She doesn't need to. Her clearance is valid and significantly above your pay grade." Pike blinked. "Sir, she's listed as a contractor. That's because she was meant to be listed that way. You weren't supposed to know she was there. Advanced notice would compromise the audit." Pike's pulse quickened. "Audit?" "Admiral," Carmichael said, his tone heavy final. Operation Red Veil is not hypothetical. It never was. Let it run its course. The line went dead. For a moment, no one breathed. The name, Red Veil, carried the weight of myth, an old Cold War protocol whispered in intelligence circles, supposedly designed to identify compromised military personnel by embedding internal audits within real operations. It was never confirmed to exist. Until now. Pike lowered the phone slowly. "Miss Cade," he said carefully. "What is Red Veil?" "I'm not authorized to brief that protocol," she replied. "Not yet." "Not yet?" Luke snapped. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. Her attention returned to her tablet. The red progress bar inched forward. Authentication sequence. 3 of 4 inputs complete. Luke took a step closer. "What are you doing?" Tessa's calm never wavered. "Following orders, Commander." His patience shattered. "You don't have any orders." He reached for the tablet. It was a mistake. In a blur, Tessa shifted her weight, catching his wrist and redirecting the grab with a fluid movement. Fast. Controlled, no wasted force. Luke stumbled half a step back, glaring. "I protected classified property," she said evenly, "as required by my clearance level. You just assaulted an officer. I prevented unauthorized access." Her tone was neutral, surgical. "There's a difference." Admiral Pike raised a hand before Luke could retort. "Enough." He turned to Ramos. "Chief, what's her status?" Ramos's eyes flicked between his screens. "Sir." "Her authentication's almost complete." And then it happened. The lights dimmed, the displays flickered, and the war room's air seemed to tighten. Every monitor went black. Then a single line appeared on each screen. Glowing red. Orders classified red. Internal activation confirmed. Admiral Pike's hand froze mid-motion. The officers stared as the room's locks clanged into place. The doors sealed. Every exit light shifted from green to crimson. Through the loudspeakers, a voice, mechanical, genderless, filled the silence. "Attention. Red Veil Protocol is now active. This facility is under Directorate authority. Compliance is mandatory." Tessa Cade stood beneath the red glow, her face calm, almost serene. The tablet in her hands pulsed like a heartbeat. The test had begun. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the low hum of the emergency lights washing everything in crimson. Admiral Pike stood frozen at the head of the table, eyes locked on the message repeating across every darkened screen. "Red Veil active. Remain seated. Protocol in progress." Commander Luke Harrow was the first to break. He surged from his chair, crossing the room in 4 furious strides, yanking at the main door handle. Nothing. He pulled harder, the muscles in his forearms straining under his uniform. It didn't even rattle. "Chief," he barked. "Override these locks." Chief Ramos was already typing at the control station, fingers flying with desperate precision. "Trying, sir." His display flickered, then filled with red text. "Access denied. Clearance insufficient. That's not possible," Ramos muttered, voice thin with disbelief. "I built half these systems." The monitor blinked again, interrupting him with a new message that scrolled across the screen like a digital whisper. "Chief Petty Officer Marcus Ramos, your credentials have been temporarily suspended. You are now under Directorate observation. Do not attempt further overrides." The words hit him like a physical blow. He backed away from the console, pale, shaken. Pike lifted the conference phone and pressed the line for Command Net Alpha. Silence. Not static. Absolute dead silence. He set the receiver down as carefully as a man placing a live grenade on the table. "Miss Cade," he said, his voice controlled but low, "I am ordering you to deactivate this." Tessa didn't move. The red glow painted her face in hard edges, making her look older, colder. "I can't do that, sir. Can't or won't," Pike demanded. Her answer was simple. "Both." Luke had abandoned the door and was advancing again, steps slow and deliberate, fury coiled in his movements. "You sealed a classified facility without authorization," he said through clenched teeth. "You're holding senior officers hostage. That's treason." He reached for her tablet a second time, but Tessa's reaction was almost graceful. She pivoted, redirecting his arm with surgical precision, moving his balance forward so that his own momentum betrayed him. In 1 second he was leaning off center, and in the next she'd released him without leaving a mark. "Don't touch me again, Commander," she said softly. Luke's chest heaved. "You..." I protected classified property using minimal force, she said before he could finish. That's within my operational authority. Authority. His voice cracked with incredulous rage. You think you have authority here? Admiral Pike slammed a hand against the table. Enough! The sound echoed through the sealed room like a gunshot. No one touches her. No one leaves their seat. Until we understand what's happening, we maintain order. Understood? Reluctantly, Luke stepped back. Lieutenant Briggs hovered nearby, fists clenched but unmoving. Captain Reed sank into his chair, eyes darting between them like a cornered animal. Then the voice from the ceiling returned. Calm, metallic, unyielding. Phase 1 complete. Behavioral baseline established. Initiating Phase 2. Identity verification and clearance authentication. Every monitor blinked back to life. Gone were the tactical maps and satellite feeds. In their place appeared digital dossiers, personnel photos and files pulled from databases far above their clearance. Each officer's name glowed at the top of a screen. The largest display at the front of the room filled with one file in particular. Cade, Tessa Marie, rank, Commander, 05, Strategic Intelligence Directorate. Clearance, Tier 1 Omega, assignment, Operation Red Veil, lead architect. The words landed like artillery fire. Luke blinked, as if rereading might change the text. That's impossible, he whispered. Red Veil was created in the 1960s. Proposed, Tessa corrected quietly. Not created. The technology didn't exist then, but 7 years ago it did. She tapped her tablet once. The main screen shifted to a video file, grainy footage marked with a timestamp from 2018. The image showed a younger Tessa, standing in uniform before a congressional subcommittee. The members' faces were blurred, but their voices echoed through the speakers, distorted yet clear. Commander Cade, said one voice, male and steady. Any audit system can be corrupted. How do you prevent the watchers from being compromised themselves? You don't, the younger Tessa replied. You design for it. Red Veil doesn't rely on human judgment. It measures patterns, micro-behaviors that reveal arrogance, cruelty, moral decay. The system doesn't care about rank or medals. It only measures ego under power. And if you fail your own test? Another voice asked. Then the system will expose me too, she said without hesitation. No one is above the audit. The footage froze on her face. Calm, unflinching. Silence settled again. Chief Ramos was the first to find his voice. You built this, he said softly. You weren't sent here to trigger it. You designed the entire thing. Tessa nodded once. Red Veil was approved on the condition that my service record be sealed and my existence removed from public logs. I was to operate as a civilian observer. She adjusted her sleeve, peeling back the beige bandage on her wrist. Beneath it was a geometric tattoo, precise, almost mechanical, with a small emblem at its center. The insignia of the Strategic Intelligence Directorate. Underneath, engraved in tiny letters, were 3 words, RV Architect 01. The room collectively inhaled. Ramos's spine straightened instinctively. Founder-level designation, he whispered. There are maybe 5 people in the entire intelligence community with that mark. Tessa's eyes flicked toward him. 4, actually. Luke's face had drained of color. You mean to tell us we've been under investigation this whole time? Not an investigation, she said calmly. An audit. Investigations start with suspicion. Audits start with data. Admiral Pike's tone was grave. The director said Red Veil was activating. He didn't say it's been active for weeks. Tessa met his gaze. 6 months, sir. Coronado Base has been monitored since March. This briefing was simply the final phase. On the screens, files began to update. Video clips appeared. Chat logs, audio recordings. The room's air seemed to thicken as reality closed in. And as the evidence unfolded, every laugh, every sneer, every act of arrogance captured and catalogued, they began to understand what Red Veil truly was. It wasn't just a protocol, it was judgment. Every screen in the war room came alive, and with it, the illusion of power began to die. The officers who'd once filled the air with laughter and mockery now sat motionless, their faces reflected in the evidence that condemned them. Footage played on a loop, their own words, their own gestures, every small cruelty magnified by cold data. On one monitor, Luke Harrow berated a junior sailor in the gym, calling him deadweight. On another, Commander Voss shared memes mocking lower-ranked staff, his signal group filled with digital sneers. Captain Reed's screen showed a recorded call, his voice crisp, careless, and unmistakably trading operational details with a private defense firm. Each clip ended with the same phrase in white text on red background. Behavioral violation. Pattern confirmed. Tessa Cade stood near the front of the room now, no longer the shadow in the back. Her tone was steady, almost clinical. Red Veil wasn't created to catch traitors through interrogation. It measures ego and moral decay. When power forgets humility, systems collapse. And every one of you gave me the data to prove it. Luke's voice broke the stillness, raw and shaking. This is illegal. You can't just surveil. I can, Tessa interrupted. Every officer on this base signed the operational security waiver upon assignment. Page 17, subsection C. Acknowledgement of behavioral monitoring for classified installations. Across the screens, the digital signatures of every man in that room appeared, undeniable proof of consent. Red Veil doesn't care about your excuses, she said. It only records what's true. Pike's eyes were fixed on the main screen, his voice low. You've been collecting data for 6 months. Yes, sir, Tessa replied. And Coronado is not the first, nor will it be the last. The doors clicked open behind her, metallic and final. 2 figures in dark suits stepped inside. 1 man, 1 woman. They moved with quiet certainty, flashing federal badges that gleamed under the red light. The woman spoke first, voice calm and practiced. Commander Luke Harrow, you are under arrest for unauthorized transmission of classified intelligence, violation of the Espionage Act, and gross misconduct in the line of duty. The silence cracked. Luke didn't move. His jaw worked soundlessly as handcuffs slid around his wrists. He looked at Tessa, eyes full of disbelief, humiliation, and something close to fear. He tried to speak, but nothing came. The agents guided him toward the exit. As the door shut behind him, the sound echoed through the sealed room, a single metallic period at the end of a long sentence. Admiral Pike broke the silence. How many others? Tessa turned toward him, the glow from her tablet outlining her in crimson light. 3 flagged for disciplinary review, Voss, Reed, and Briggs. No criminal charges, but behavioral correction is mandatory. Phones buzzed almost immediately. Notifications from command authority. Transfer orders, investigations, reassignments. Captain Reed read his message and paled. Commander Voss dropped his phone into his lap. Briggs just stared straight ahead, unblinking. Admiral Pike leaned back in his chair, the exhaustion of 30 years of leadership settling on his shoulders. What happens now? Tessa's eyes softened slightly. Now, sir, we rebuild. We dismantle the culture that allowed this. The screens changed again. Lines of data replaced by graphs, reports, and recommendations. Phase 2, remediation plan. Her voice carried the same calm authority she'd held since the beginning. First, she said, mandatory ethics training for all officers, rank 04 and above, real simulation testing, not the PowerPoint variety, pass rate 85% minimum, or reassignment to non-command roles. She swiped, and the next slide appeared. Second, a direct, anonymous reporting line to the Inspector General's office, with quarterly audits to ensure it's being used. Third, external behavioral assessments for all command personnel, conducted by independent evaluators. No internal protection. No influence. Her final slide showed a list of names, dates, and cases. Past complaints buried under bureaucracy. And finally, a full review of every ignored harassment claim filed at this base in the last 2 years. The room was still. Even the red light seemed to pulse slower. Admiral Pike exhaled, his voice low but certain. I should have seen it. The arrogance. The rot. Yes, sir, Tessa said quietly. You should have. But recognition is the first step toward repair. He looked at her then. Truly looked. And something in his expression changed. You're right, he said, standing. Then he did something no one expected. He raised his hand in a formal salute. Commander Cade, he said solemnly, I apologize for doubting you, for allowing this place to become what it did, and for making you prove what we should have known. Tessa didn't return the salute. She wasn't in uniform, but she inclined her head with quiet respect. Apology accepted, Admiral. But we'll need more than words. You'll have it, Pike promised. Behind him, the remaining officers sat in uneasy silence. The hierarchy that had protected them was gone, stripped away by a woman they'd dismissed as irrelevant. Pike turned toward them, his voice cutting through the air with renewed strength. Gentlemen, you're looking at the future. Commander Cade didn't just expose a bad officer. She exposed us, our habits, our arrogance, our silence. That ends today. He picked up the phone again, and this time the line worked. This is Admiral Pike, he said. Put me through to the Secretary of the Navy. While he waited, Tessa gathered her tablet and stepped toward the exit. Chief Ramos rose and saluted her. Ma'am, he said quietly. Thank you for reminding us what integrity looks like. She smiled faintly. Thank you, Chief, for noticing when no one else did. Petty Officer Hayes stood next, young and nervous. Ma'am, I never thought you were just a contractor. Her smile deepened. I know, Hayes, that's why you're being promoted. The system noticed. She left the war room, the red light fading behind her. Outside, the corridor smelled of cold metal and rain. The air felt lighter, freer. She walked past two silent Marines who nodded with newfound respect as she passed. Her Jeep waited in the lot, old but reliable. She climbed in, set her tablet on the seat beside her, and stared at the building one last time. Inside, change was finally beginning. She opened a secured app. A map appeared, 17 red dots scattered across the globe. Coronado's dot glowed green. Completed. 16 remained. A message flashed across her screen. Tower 4. Authorization granted. Next site, Norfolk. Cover identity package attached. Well done, Architect. Tessa Cade exhaled slowly. Her reflection in the windshield looked almost foreign. A woman both proud and weary. She started the engine, the hum of the Jeep mixing with the distant roll of thunder over the Pacific. The road stretched ahead, endless, uncertain. 16 more bases, 16 more rooms full of laughter that would die the same way, under the red glow of accountability. And as the Jeep rolled toward the horizon, the sky burned the color of warning lights, because justice, she knew, wasn't loud. It was patient. And it was watching, always watching, even when the powerful thought no one was.